several takes. I hope you like that intro. It is really hot in here. And honestly, at this rate, as I put this over here for a moment, I would love to make this the last take. So, just like this. Of course, this is an angle where you see me better. Anywho. I don't know how effective this is. I don't know how much this even means. I'd like for this to be at a certain angle. The light's too blinding. Whatever. Any of you saw the mask design. I'm gonna do this earlier at some point so that I don't have to do that, just so this is more visible. But whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna just move on. So, announcement, I am gonna actually make actual songs, not just that intro. And that is something I care about. I have been delaying myself with self-doubt, and I have been having to let that go. And I have come to the realization that I'm just gonna be stuck if I don't throw away my self-doubt and just do something without thinking about all the things that are making me doubt myself, all the things that are making me think I'm worthless. It's about time I just let it all go, because there's no more time to care. No more time to care at all. I'm just going to keep getting more stuck unless I just move on from that and actually try with things I like, with things I'm passionate about, with things I love. Because music is literally, for me, the only way I can express myself. I'm not social. I know everyone thinks every stupid thing is not such a big deal for somebody that is more of needs music to express, okay? And yes, work is, of course, necessary. That's obvious. But the other obvious thing people don't tell you about, if you're doing work that is not really something you're comfortable with, or I guess not just uncomfortable with, something you know you're definitely not passionate about. I did it and drilled my head at it for years and years and years straight, like 10 years. It is why I started doubting myself and started seeing myself as worthless. I put so much energy into it, I never moved forward. That was the part that really sucked the most. I was basically stuck at dishwasher. That doesn't really make you motivated to try. Was stuck at dishwasher for like 8 years straight. No matter what you try, no one cares. You're just being forced to you're worth this dishwasher. And if you try anything else, there's no hope. You can't find another job. And if you have no job, you have no money. That being in that situation, thinking about that is not fun. I want to be able to switch into a job I know I can give full effort in, that actually grows me true, that actually helps my gifts grow what I am good at, what I am given to use for the world and help the world. One of those, funny enough, happens to be music. I have an interesting taste in music, admittedly. A varied taste, and I'd like to utilize my kind of thoughts and ideas to express something that actually brings an idea to people's minds. Something positive, something that actually teaches and helps. Instead of telling people to just be stuck in somewhere. Guess it's about time I started believing I can actually just throw that at the world and say, hey, listen, and maybe I am worth something for trying. More than I tell myself I am. But that's the least of everything, and that's the least of all the point. More important than that is something I've realized. Recently, thinking about a list, in what was revealed on it, I was just thinking about something that otherwise I don't usually think about. And it took a while because initially I wasn't wanting to think about it. I was just revolted. I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want to think about it. I initially moved on, but eventually, of course, my mind would bring up something I couldn't ignore. Something that was a little too on point, especially for its time. Now, what I'm referring to is the disgusting actions found on the Epstein list, where Epstein, of course, people he's working with, when they were on a boat, they decided to do their disgusting rituals. You know what I'm talking about. I don't want to go into any further detail, too much detail. But given what I'm going to have to relate it to, I'm going to have to give some. They did actions with the children's organs after killing them, likely in a sacrificial, ritualistic manner. And that's all I'm going to go into that one. Eventually, realized when I heard about that and thinking about that every so often, because that's unfortunately not something that can easily escape my head, now that I know that happened, eventually an old memory that was really similar came to mind. Way back when I was into creepypastas, you probably, of course, know this one. It is, of course, the classic Squidward suicide from August 8th, 2010. And keep in mind, what was found in this list that I just mentioned was recently released. You may know what I'm talking about, and you may think to yourself, okay, if you have seen what I'm talking about, well, you think to yourself, okay, but maybe you're thinking too deep into it, though, because it's just children that also happen to have their organs splayed out. Except it also wasn't randomly splayed out. It just didn't give as much detail as the Epstein's list. And that creepypasta. See, it was still ritualistic. It just left out the straight up cannibalism part that the Epstein list tells of. But the kids are still murdered, and not only that, displayed in a ritualistic manner, with their guts on top of them. Like in a Epstein sacrifice, essentially. One of the Baal or pagan sacrifices Epstein loved participating in with his friends. The individual in question in these pictures, as described in the creepypasta, was in that exact manner. With that noted, and something that was at least, let's think about this, 16 years ago, that's an important thing to note. What if I told you that wasn't the only time a story noted this? Not only that, there was another very important date on it, not just the date where this creepypasta was first uploaded, when, but also the date it sets in, 2005. It says, in 2005, from the perspective of an intern at Nickelodeon. What do we know about in 2005? Well, funny enough, in 2005, that was when Epstein himself, Jeffrey Epstein, was first investigated for his child sex ring. He was arrested in 2006. Interesting, this creepypasta, but there was a very specific date when Epstein was investigated. Now, what if I told you that wasn't the only thing? What if I told you way back in 2001, before the term in 2006, copypasta came around? Funny enough, yes, in 2006, that's when that term was first used. Or the term in 2007, what we know as creepypasta. Yes, this is when the term was first coined, in 2007. I would probably say like folklore pasta because it's creepy pasta in a very old school folklore man. In a very old school folklore way of telling stories. Way back in 2001, where Ted the Cave Diver was a big deal, and they were talking about a paint. And they were still talking about a painting they were first talking about in 2000 called The Hands Resist Him, that was first painted in 1972. There was also another, like, folklore pasta along the lines of Ted the Cave Diver that was being talked about with Ted the Cave Diver. Two, specifically. Two, with Ted the Cave Diver back in 2001. And they had uploads up until 2005. All three of them. The other two was a January 1st, 2001 hijackings, also known as the Teletubby hijackings. Yeah. What if I told you the other one was another hijacking creepy pasta story, or folklore pasta, straight up called Nick Jr. Anomaly, or originally the Nickelodeon hijacking. Sounding interesting? This was way back in 2001, and one of their uploads that they were having between 2001 and 2005 was an actual SpongeBob one, that apparently this actually happened. A SpongeBob episode got hijacked at some point in time. Now, I will go into what that entire story was about later. But note that this is clearly not only as deep as it looks, it's even deeper. Every time, yes, I wrote all this down, every time throughout all these years, where there is some sort of change with the creepypastas, it seems to be reacting to the corrupt, deep elites in their actions. Every time they move, essentially. Allah. Yeah, for those people who don't know about a very specific important thing to remember, 2006 to 2008. He was having his little war with a fund that realized how evil he was in about 2005. He invested in this fund back in 2000, invested about $8 million, give or take. Yeah, $8 million. Years later, he starts thinking, maybe I should get my fund back. It's worth $140 million by that time. But by that time, it's around like 2006, and they're thinking, oh, you're a criminal. You don't deserve this. Logically. But instead of just taking the consequences of his actions, he decides to be a spiteful little child and has an actual war with them. This little battle he decides to have with them ends in him winning, destroying the entire fund. Yes, destroying the fund itself, where it doesn't even exist on a wiki anymore. The page doesn't exist on wiki. I can't make this up. They deleted that page. And on top of that, he got 2 billion. Yeah, he straight up got to steal the 2 billion that was theirs and deleted them from existence on the internet, essentially. He was in prison during this time, mind you. He was still using his influence in prison. Likely because of his friends outside of prison. And that's literally just the start of this. This keeps going. Creepypasta stories, the amount of stories in the amount of fan base it gets, tends to react to the movements of criminal underground as if they're trying to tell us what they interacted with, but couldn't under normal forums because they would be considered hoaxes. They would be considered conspiracy theorists. Crazy to call out somebody. The only one that successfully did anything against him was literally Trump. Back when he was a Democrat. Still, yes, he was a Democrat before 2016. In fact, around that time was when he stopped. And I feel like there's a bigger reason than just becoming president or getting votes. Given that the real reason the Democrats started disliking him started when he called out Epstein. Before 2005, which 2005 happened to Epstein, because Trump found out a little more about him than he liked and called him out for his evils. Which started the investigation in the first place. And it's pretty much before this, he was also a little darling to the Democrats. But Trump was also his own little darling to these Democrats before 2005. But the second he calls them out, oh my God, we gotta make plans to deal with him. The entirety of mentions on Trump in the Epstein list, every single time, is only there when they're talking about trying to stop him from becoming president before 2016 happened. So, you must understand me questioning a few things. When it looking like the only reason they hated him was when every other Democrat said, let's be okay with Epstein and his evils, when everyone else was still being buddy-buddy, knowing very well what he was doing, and probably was doing since 1980. When Trump had a reason to believe he might be involved with anything of the sort, when Trump even saw him being sketchy around teenage girls, he called an investigation on them. Keep that in mind. Think about that. Nobody else did. Until him. Everybody else got way, way deeper than that and was silent among the Democrats. Think about that. And that's where I'm kind of wondering if Trump was actually doing what he was doing and hated because he started becoming more against Epstein. And that's what made him more Republican, is getting backlash for saying, you know, Epstein's a scumbag. I don't like what he does. I really still believe to this day, the only reason the corrupt Democrat elites hate him is because they put their friend behind bars. They don't want to admit that, but that's the real reason. Let's be honest here. This keeps going, of course. What if I told you, of course, this one's not the only time of somebody saying they don't like Epstein, but Trump was just the most vocal. Because it's not easy to put down Epstein with the influence he had, especially back in the 2000s. We showed what he was able to pull while in prison between 2006 and 2009. But then Trump took office in 2016. You starting to probably piece together the real reason Epstein was talking to the other Democrats about trying to prevent Trump from becoming president, and every time he's mentioned in the list, is because he's the most motivated to take him down. He was the only one among the Democrat Party who wanted to take them down. One of the first ones to switch to Republican because he wanted to take down Epstein. So, with that in mind, I hope you're having a better picture of this. From the evidence showing and the timeline and actions, I don't really have a reason to believe that this is crazy. This is unfortunately making sense. And the other stuff that are making sense is what scares me, especially what I explained to you about these scary similarities between what was shown in Squidward's suicide and a lot of what Epstein's did. And not only that, there's even more shown that isn't even talked about even deeper. What if I told you that if you decided to look at actions of creepypastas around these specific years, like even 2005 and 2010, you'll get an interesting action. Not only the fact that in 2010, the Epstein files were first released, showing the former Prince Andrew's connections to Epstein, his buddy. What if I told you that characters that were first mentioned by name about 2008, and one of them whose picture was only shown in about 2005, were solidified as full characters at 2010. These are, and I'm not joking, the Slender Man himself, Jeff the Killer, Laughing Jack, and the Rake. Of course, we know around this time, August 8th, 2010, was Squidward's suicide as well. Fascinatingly enough. What if I told you, in recent year 2026, there's another Nickelodeon creepypasta around the name Ruby and the Diamond Princess creepypasta? What if I told you this has a weirdly interesting timeline that shows too many similarities with actions of the Muslim rape gangs in Europe? A kind of cult of child trafficking and human trafficking that, as far as we know, may have gone on back in Egyptian Old Testament days, before the word Islam was created, back when it was just pagans in Arabia trafficking whoever they could get. So, what if I also told you that very same story, Ruby and the Diamond Princess, ends with a picture of the character this story talks about, the viewer watching, the narrator, that is, that Ruby winds up on the ground, gutted, with her guts splayed on her in a similar ritualistic fashion to Squidward's suicide, which, as discussed, is also the same fashion as discussed in the Epstein files. What if I told you that that end also was with the Diamond Princess herself saying, "I wish you were more like her"? There's more that went on in the story, but that is essentially the gist of Ruby and the Diamond Princess. It's not even ending here, because that is just a few. From what I've gathered, creepypasta has had, give or take, 200 stories. I would randomly, probably round up guess that it goes to 185, 127 if I'm trying to make it as specific as I can. That's a rough estimate. On top of that, about 55 to 57 of them have to do with kids disappearing, kidnappings, trafficking. I find it funny a person told me that, bro, it's not as deep as you thought, it's just a bad creepypasta referring to Squidward's suicide. And immediate thought in my head when I saw that was, you're hoping it's not as deep as it is. I can't pretend like I haven't seen what I've seen. There is so much more than I've even discussed. Look at this. This is just one page I've showed you. Let's see. Let me get out and just the pages I've shown about stories and their timelines on just the creepypastas alone. Ah, good word. One, two. Gotta make sure I have my brain together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's 5. 5 pages. Maybe a little more than that, I'd say. And that's just talking about the creepypasta storyline. The story of creepypasta's development throughout the years. They have had their spikes in 2015, 2025, and 2026. 2015's was almost exclusively disappearances, kidnappings, and the such. It was also essentially their first mega explosion, the first time they had a very big boom, where it was so much more that you would have to look at compilations upon compilations of creepypastas. The stories just kept coming and kept being made into that 2015. It's regarded essentially as the golden age of creepypasta. Well, not the only one. I'd say it would probably be the golden age of old school creepypasta, as new school creepypasta, as I would call it, has its own golden age technically with 2025. Man, what an interesting coincidence. Did you know in 2026 was the day that Pizzagate was first talked about and referred to as a hoax? In recent years, it looks like Pizzagate not only was a real thing, it's been a real thing. And this is way older than the first incident that had it called Pizzagate. I'm pretty sure that with the connections Epstein was looking for, he was trying to get his own child sex trafficking ring. The sex trafficking wing of the guys that put him under their wing, Bear Stearns. Yeah, Bear Stearns Banking he worked for between 1976 and 1981. And, given that he was most definitely a pedophile before then, I'm pretty sure they took him under their wing and helped him as his friend. Probably had their own older child sex trafficking ring too. I'm pretty sure he used his connections to have theirs connected to the oldest, what I would say, the child sex trafficking legacy of the old ancient Arabic sex trafficking ring. That, yes, I'm pretty sure is still going on today because they have not changed any actions, they just changed justifications for them. Slightly. I guess their methods of justifying it, I should say. I am running out of time for all this. But that is essentially the gist. I will go through all of this evidence in each story and look at what they actually say in these stories in detail. Each and every one of these creepypasta stories. What I have seen, to at least what I believe, is in the consciousness of something like creepypasta, which lets people freely share their stories, essentially, in a way, or share their creativity in horror story making, where someone could make a story to try and warn people, and the elites will not bother them, maybe, or at least they'll have less likely reason to bother them. Given how it was designed, I feel that this allowed a psychological development when you can actually look at people's psychology in response to the corrupt deep. It is actually responding to every action Epstein has ever made, and likely is responding to every action of the corrupt deep. I am very certain of this. I couldn't be more certain of something like this. It was not easy to think about trying to say something like this, not because of it seeming crazy, quite the opposite, because it seems less crazy the more details I find, and that kind of worries and scares me. It's more of the thought of feeling like I've been ignoring people that would try and call for help, but I didn't have the context. So I don't really hate myself for just not knowing better. It's not wise. But now that I know better, I have no excuses. And if you are at all having any reason to listen to what I'm saying, believe anything I'm saying, you don't either. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall fear no evil. Well, that's about all the time I got. And in full honesty, it sweats like a dog in here, so I am going to end it there. Lord bless y'all. I hope this helps people in any way. And I hope my crazy ideas help people at all. In at least some way. I feel the Lord has given me a gift to, and I guess I should say, some detective way, find some interesting details that others would probably either intentionally or unintentionally overlook. So I will use that gift. And this has been the best time to do it, because, again, Trump's the only one that actually acts like he wants to do anything about this stuff. You can only start talking about this kind of stuff with Trump in office. This is our chance. This is our chance to confront this and do something as a community, as a people, as anything. If anybody's listening to this, this is the only chance. It's time to act. I'm going to get my info out there the best I can. And I'm going to try. Lord bless any of y'all who are listening.